I know I come off a little bit brash. I'm not a politician. I'm only a public servant, but I don't even have the power of taxpayer dollars, or I don't even have the power of the government behind me yet. And I'm already doing more for the people of this city and done more for the people of this country in the last 3 years than all of these other people combined. And while these government officials that are now telling you to vote for them, we're closing your business down. I was literally going door to door to businesses, helping families stay in their homes. I did it on my own time, on my own dime, for one reason. I care about the people.
I had the opportunity today to interview Sky Saccoccia, more popularly known as Chris Sky, who is running for mayor of Toronto. We spoke about many interesting things, especially his vision for Toronto. I have to say, some of his answers were not what I expected to hear, especially with regards to working with the current Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. We also spoke about his relationship with both the police and public health if elected mayor. This is a unique opportunity to hear from a mayoral candidate who has an actual plan, which was not a made overnight as a member of self-entitled political elites, but rather it was developed over 2 decades of being a businessman within the GTA. I agree with Chris when he says he's done more for the lives of not only Torontonians, but for people across the entire country than any other candidate running for mayor. He has had a deep and positive impact in the minds of Canadians over the last 3 years. I was motivated to do this interview because I believe Chris was a pioneer amongst those who would eventually come together and tell the government that we are free people and that our innate rights trump their dictatorial decrees. Regardless of this election outcome, Chris will go down in history as one of the most courageous Canadians who advocated for our rights to be respected. I believe actions speak louder than words, and Chris has been a man of action and has led by example. If ever there was a time to reward a candidate for their dedication to this country, now is the time. Additionally, if Canadians truly want to start taking control over their destiny and the direction of this country, they need to get out and vote for one of their own. This will not happen if Torontonians don't get out and vote. I want to thank Chris for being generous with his time and agreeing to do this interview. This is an interview you won't want to miss. Today's guest is none other than Chris Sky. Honestly, if you don't know who Chris Sky is by now, I'm not even sure why you would watch this podcast. I want to give this opportunity to Chris to be fair, to talk about what Chris's issues are. Chris is running for mayor of Toronto, and it is my absolute belief that Chris has not been given a fair shake in the media, and I want to help to rectify that. So this interview is really about who is Chris Sky. He's running for the mayor of Toronto, and let's get into what some of the issues are, not just with the mayoral election, but also I want the viewers to know who is Chris Sky. So, Chris, you've got this persona, you've got a brand, and let's talk about really who Chris Sky is. So
we got to start with my real name, and it's the name that's going to be on the ballot. It's Chris Saccoccia, Italian background. People call me Chris Sky because that's my company, Sky Homes Corporation, which, right, by the way, for over 20 years, I have actually an award-winning company in development, planning, design, and build. So I'm in a very unique position that not only was I successful in the private sector, but my private sector job had me working in collaboration with the public sector at every step of the way, for zoning, for development, for building. I had to work with every single department within the government, cut through their red tape, and make things happen on my timeline, my schedule, and my budget, not on theirs. So I learned how to work within the public and private sector and do that efficiently, which is an oxymoron in government. On top of that, I have over over 20 years experience of managing large amounts of money and even creating the pro formas required to obtain multi-million dollar lending from the largest lenders in Canada. So I know what things are worth. I know how long it takes to get things done. And I know how to manage money, resources, and people better than any of those people that are supposedly qualified because they've been in politics 40 years, like Olivia Chow. What does politics in 40 years mean? That means you've literally never done anything in your life, and you've been living off the public for the majority of your life. What was Olivia Chow's background? She was an artist. She worked as a sculptor. A sculptor. How does that give her any experience whatsoever in politics, in building, in raising revenue? That's why when you talk to a politician and you talk to them about raising revenue, the only thing that comes to their mind is higher taxes, higher fees, higher levies, and bigger government and bigger spending every single time. When you talk to somebody who's actually worked in the private sector and you ask us, how would you like to raise revenue? Well, we create opportunities that are going to attract private businesses to invest billions and billions of dollars into the city, create that GDP and create thousands of jobs and actually invest in the infrastructure of the city and the people of the city. That's how you eliminate multi-billion-dollar deficits and actually increase the standard of living for the people while decreasing the size and scope of government and decreasing the amount of taxes and other fees necessary to operate it, while operating more efficiently. We don't have a government like that. We haven't had a government like that for decades, and the result has been a Toronto that has degraded year after year after year after year. And like you said, on the media, you're only going to see the fake news. And we know the fake news is funded by our government. In fact, on Twitter, they have to be labeled government-funded media because it's that full of crap. So who do you think the government-funded media is going to put on TV to make you believe you need to choose from? They're only going to put their cookie-cutter government-funded candidates. And the one they want to push the most is obviously the most far radical left of all. So they can impose more control, more taxes, more green agenda. And Olivia Chow said it herself. I'm ready to raise taxes. She was proud of it. This is how they think. And they've proven it the last 3 years. What did they do the last 3 years? They closed you, they locked you in their house. They shut down your business. They forced things up your nose. They forced things on your face. They forced an injection in your arm. All the while, they exempted themselves from all of these wonderful things. And while you were struggling financially and mentally, they kept giving themselves raises. That's what they did for you the last 3 years.
I know you predicted what would happen because of the lockdowns, but what did you put into place to combat what you knew was going to happen?
In March 2020, literally within a week of the lockdown happening, I had already created a nonprofit called Back to Work because I had the foresight to understand that these government policies were going to decimate small businesses. In fact, at the end of March 2020, I did an entire interview explaining exactly what was going to happen as a result of these lockdowns before the lockdowns even started. And I told everybody that in Canada, small business represents over 95% of all the businesses in Canada and about 70% of the jobs in Canada. Hence, it is the backbone of our economy and the backbone of our country. And within a few months, we had already lost like 30% of the businesses. It doesn't take a genius to figure out where that was going to go. So I created a nonprofit, and while these government officials that are now telling you to vote for them so they can run the city, were closing your business down, kicking families out of their homes, giving people mental health crises, I was literally going door to door to businesses, helping families keep their business afloat, helping families stay in their homes. And I did this for hundreds and hundreds of individual businesses around the city. And I did it on my own time, on my own dime, for one reason. I care about the people.
You've been called a conspiracy theorist, but everything you said would happen happened?
Well, I was trying to tell you guys that, hey, masks aren't really going to work. Hey, they're going to tell you to take this vaccine that they're calling a vaccine when it really isn't. And then it's not even going to work. So they're going to tell you still got to wear a mask. And now you're going to have to take more and more of these shots to keep going. And exactly what I said happened. And they call it a conspiracy theory. No, it's just because I knew that the government was working together to impose this upon the public. And that's why every one of these government officials that are now vying for your vote voted to extend the lockdowns, voted to give themselves a pay raise. Every single time. They didn't help you. They weren't for you. In fact, they had me arrested 26 times, falsely and illegally. And I can say that because after beating 71 charges and having no criminal record, it's quite obvious that I am a target of both the government and the intelligence agencies and law enforcement. For instance, just a few days ago, at an official meet and greet event, when I went to meet potential voters and I went to go talk to them, the police showed up on site at a private parking lot and literally used obstruction of justice and lied to create a false pretense where they pretended that the owners of the parking lot had contacted law enforcement and specifically requested to remove me.
What possible reason would the police have to target you and not the other candidates?
Simply because they knew that the demographic of this event was young people, 18 to 25, the people that they do not want to be aware, the people that they do not want to vote, the people that they do not want uniting more than anything. The only thing that the government fears more than me is the young people, the next generation. And hundreds showed up for me. And the police did everything in their power, and even things that weren't in their power, to try and silence me, try to take me out of there. And all I wanted to do was hand out my shirts. So what did I do? I opened up the trunk and went to hand out my shirts. And on video, blatantly from behind, a police officer with two hands grabbed a metal car door and closed it on my back, sending me flying in front of hundreds of witnesses and literally with dozens of people filming. And I turned around and I said, "Why did you assault me?" And he laughed. He laughed because in his mind, he knew he could do that and get away with it.
Everybody saw it. I have it on camera. Assault! He assaulted Chris Sky. He assaulted him on camera.
If the tables had been turned, what would have happened? I would have been on the floor. I would have been beat. I would have been handcuffed. I would have been arrested. I would have been charged. I would have been convicted because it's on video with assault with a weapon on police officer. And the media would have had a field day. Chris Sky arrested, caught on video, beating police officer with weapon. It would have been international news being played on a loop over and over on every one of those stations. But Chris Sky getting assaulted by the police on video, you didn't even hear about it until you heard about it from me, and Six Buzz had to put it on internet because the media won't even touch it. If that was any other mayoral candidate, the media would have been all over it. Or if I had been arrested, the media would have been all over it. But me being assaulted plainly and blatantly on camera by the police who were only there to commit electoral interference, because that's exactly what it was. When you get a direct order to go and break up an event that's a mayoral candidate meet and greet, that's called electoral interference, especially when it's on private property and you have absolutely no right to be there. And I went to the police station. I reported the incident, and I even told them I'm going to subpoena their phone records to prove that they never got a phone call granting them any type of authority over me. But this is the kind of stuff that we have to get over. So everybody needs to understand that the media is nothing but an extension of your current government.
What do you believe the current government wants?
They want another crony in power that they can control, so everything that's been happening the last 40 plus years can continue to happen. What do they not want more than anything? Change. What do I represent? Change. So they're going to try to silence me. And the next biggest propaganda, because they're not going to be able to silence me, because tomorrow we have the worldwide rally, and there's going to be probably a couple thousand people, probably more, and most of them are going to be wearing Chris Sky for mayor or Just Say No merchandise, showing exactly who the people support.
You have such a huge social media and public following. Why do you think that so many people support you?
Because I am the people. Let me say that again. I am the people. I am not a politician. The politicians proved the last 3 years that they're up here and the people are down here. They were the ones making the rules and exempting them. We were the ones that were supposed to follow or get arrested or otherwise. I was one of you. I fought tooth and nail beside you. I protected you. I warned you. I gave you solutions to the problem. I inspired you to just say no.
What are your plans to make things different, make them better?
I will destroy the status quo. I will eliminate waste and corruption, and I will make everybody's life tangibly better. And at first, you're going to be really happy. And then you're going to get really angry. You know why you're going to get angry? Because you're going to finally realize that for the last multiple decades, this city has been intentionally mismanaged to make your lives worse and take more of your money and impose more controls over your life. And if you don't believe me, just think of the next agenda that's coming, the 15-minute city, the personal carbon allowance. And if you think it's a joke, and I've warned people about this, we already know Edmonton has been divided into 15 districts. We already know they plan the same thing for Toronto. We already know that I told you that they plan on using a supposed carbon allowance and carbon limits to limit how much you can travel by air, to try to eliminate your personal vehicle, and to even limit your consumption of meat and track what you eat. And people call that a conspiracy theory. And now what did they just announce? The mayor of New York, just to show you who has these powers and who can protect you from this kind of thing, the mayor of New York imposed a new law that states they are now going to track the groceries you purchase for your carbon footprint. And they are now going to limit the amount of meat served at any publicly owned institution to fight climate change. Literally exactly what I told you they are going to do. And they have the exact same agenda planned for our city in Toronto. And I am not only the only one talking about it, not only am I the only one with over 20 years experience about this specific topic, so I know exactly what they're trying to do. I know the short and long-term ramifications. I also know how to negate it, and I also know how to protect you from it. And I'm going to be the only one that knows how to do that and the only one that actually does it.
There are currently 102 candidates in this race, 102. What are you offering to make things different than all of them?
All these other candidates have ideas, ridiculous ideas, and they're all ideas based on taking more of your money and get bigger government and less freedom, less mobility, less opportunity for your children. When I was talking to those kids, and I say kids because I'm 39 years old right now, and I'm talking to 18 to 20-year-olds, and the number one thing they said to me is, how the hell am I ever going to own a home? And I looked at them and I said, you're right. When I was your age, when I was 18 years old, and I was building houses in a suburb like Vaughan, you could get a townhouse for $300,000 and you have to put about $20,000 down. Not bad. That same townhouse now in Vaughan will be about $1.2 million, and as a first-time home buyer, they're going to want around $150K. That was only like 20 years ago, not even. How did it get to that level? And how do they expect you to own a home? The answer, they don't. They don't. Most of the other candidates aren't even talking about home ownership programs. They're all talking about rent control and how to get you better rent deals and how to make it so they can't kick you out if you don't pay your rent, because they know they're going to create the conditions of more poverty. That's what they do. They don't know how to create wealth. Our home platform to solve the housing crisis is very simple. I already know the highest costs from your home. If you buy $1 million house, over 30% of those costs are government costs. Fees, taxes, and levies, all government costs, and all exacerbated because not only do they charge you for those things, it creates a lot of delay in the process. And just like the old adage goes, especially for developers, time is money. Every month delayed or incurred from a rezoning, a development, or a building permit process is another month of salaries you had to pay, another month of interest payment you had to pay on your contracts and your loans and your land. That was what brings up the cost of houses. So if you really want to bring down home prices, you really want to solve the housing crisis, and you really want to make it easier for young people and first-time home buyers and low-income families to own a home, how about this? This was my housing platform, and I don't have to write it down. I can talk about it freely. And it's not just an idea. It's a friggin' plan that has tangible implementation. We are going to streamline the development process for particularly high-density residential in core areas. Not 15-minute city style where they have 4 or 5 stories with commercial and retail on the bottom, residential on top, and maximum amounts of parking for cars. And why do they do that? Because in the 15-minute city, they expect you to work upstairs in that building, live upstairs in that building, work downstairs in that building, and then go to the gym, do your grocery shopping and everything else in the middle sections of those buildings. Surprise, surprise, you're literally living inside for 90% of your life. And that's why they don't have car parking, because you're not going to be allowed to own one. But in my city of Toronto, we are going to fast track and incentivize high density residential real estate, high rise with multi-level underground parking, providing the infrastructure now and for future growth of automobiles. And the way we're going to do this is by getting people the rezoning, the development, and the building process a lot faster and a lot cheaper. This will allow the developers to build many more units in the same amount of time, increasing the volume and drastically reducing the costs. So now you're going to have availability and you're going to have affordability. And for the first time, low income and other people who are struggling to buy a home, we are going to introduce a government rent-to-own program where the developers are going to have to allocate a certain percentage of units based on the size and scope of the development to the government for this program. So now you're going to have students where typically they were paying $1,500 a month rent each as roommates in a place. And after 5-6 years, they move, and all that money went to waste. And every month they're spending every dollar they make because they're not investing in their own future or their own equity. Well, now these same people can be 50-50 rent-to-own owners in that property. So every month they're going to be investing in their own future, and that's going to give them an incentive to not only work harder but actually save money. So it's going to change the entire attitude of the youth because you're going to provide them opportunity, and that hope and that opportunity is the most important thing in a young person's life. And under their regimes, that's gone. Under their regime, you will own nothing and be happy, and they're really proud about it. And I don't want that for you.
What do you ultimately want for our kids' future?
I want you to have the same and better opportunities than I had. That is my responsibility as a Canadian citizen, to make sure the next generation has equal or better opportunity than me. And with these people in power, it's guaranteed that they will not. If I get elected, it's guaranteed that not only are we going to make everybody's life better, not only are we going to expose the corruption and the lawlessness and the intentional mismanagement in decades past, we are going to provide the blueprint and the leadership for all other cities in North America and beyond to follow, and we can create a revolution around the world where people can finally see the true potential of the areas they live. We have plans for the traffic and the TTC. We have plans to bring billions of dollars of revenue to the city. We have plans to eliminate the garbage crisis while using it to provide us with clean, free energy. We have plans to make locally 365 day a year grown indoor and transported locally food production to increase the availability, to increase the viability, and decrease the prices. As we know, the number one cost, most people actually don't know this, so I'll tell you. The number one cost attributed to your food right now is the taxes on the transport. It had to get on a boat. It had to get on a plane. It had to get on a truck. It had to get on another truck. Imagine you can eliminate all of that. The prices of food will be astronomically lower, and you can get something like locally grown organic strawberries in January in Canada, in Toronto. Why aren't they doing this? Because they want you to believe that you need to have less and less and less, because that's what this entire climate change idea is. It's carrying on the COVID restrictions and the COVID lockdowns, but now, not under the guise of health and safety, under the guise of saving the planet. So now human beings went from individuals with individual rights and freedoms being paramount to society and individual responsibility being paramount to society to now we are the problem. We need to be taxed, traced, monitored, controlled, and we need to have the government and everybody else involved in every decision we make for the greater good. That is what they used COVID for, as a vehicle for psychological manipulation to transform society to be ready to accept this entire green dictatorship, because that's exactly what it is. The personal carbon allowance followed by the digital ID, the digital currency, and then you're screwed.
So tell us about your Bitcoin plan.
I know this scares a lot of people that don't understand. We have a 6-point Bitcoin plan that we want to introduce into society. It starts with educating people about what Bitcoin is and what cryptocurrencies are. And the reason for this is because we know, another one of my conspiracy theories, about a central bank digital currency. Up until 3 days ago, I was crazy conspiracy theorists were talking about it. And now, sure enough, they tell you that's exactly what they intend to bring out. Well, how did we come up with this plan for the 6-point thing? Well, Nigeria gave me the idea. Weird, right? Well, in Nigeria, 11% of the population know how to use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So they thought, this is going to be a great place to introduce our central bank digital currency. Already over 10% of the population uses it. Adoption will be almost immediate. No. Because the people were cognizant and educated on how cryptocurrencies work and how dangerous a central bank digital currency could be, while there was 11% of the population willing to use the actual Bitcoin and other cryptos, when it came to the central bank digital currency, less than 1 out of 300 people would use it. So less than 0.3% of the population. And so what did the government do? To try to incentivize to use their central bank digital currency, they simply banned you from withdrawing cash from your bank account. And they put a weekly limit, a very low weekly limit of a few $100s, even for businesses, to try to force people to use the central bank digital currency. So if that doesn't give you alarm bells, Canada, on exactly what they will do, not just what they could do, what they actually did do, and what they will do to you, the central bank digital currency is a precursor to slowly eliminating cash from society. Because once they eliminate cash from society, now they can literally control every single dollar you earn, every single dollar you save, every single dollar you spend, when, where, and how you are allowed to spend it. In other words, they are now your parent, and you are now the child for generations. And they can control you, your children, your children's children, and their children's children. And they don't even have to do anything because you're going to give them that power, or so they think. That's how dangerous a central bank digital currency is on its own. And when you combine that with a digital ID And we all know exactly how a digital ID will work. Think vaccine passport, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, you're going to have to scan your digital ID if you want to come in this gym, or you want to travel, or you want to go to work. And guess what? If your digital ID isn't up to date because you didn't get your vaccine and you didn't get your other vaccine and you didn't do whatever else they told you to do, they can tell you have to stand on one foot, jump up and down 10 times and say, I love the government. And if you don't do that right in front of them, surprise, your digital ID no longer works. And now, not only do you not have access to the places like we didn't in COVID, you won't have access to your own money on top of that. So imagine how wonderful a digital ID and digital currency is. And then remember when we had the power outage in Canada. Remember that. And Rogers and all those other systems went down. Imagine what would happen if you didn't have cash. And the government could do that whenever they wanted. The government didn't even need an emergency to freeze your bank account. They could just flip a switch on anybody. Oh, the government wouldn't freeze your bank account, right?
Last year, I got my bank accounts frozen during the convoy.
There you go. My point exactly.
Exactly. And this is something that I have been warning people about, is the fact that without a warrant, without a charge, without a conviction, without any form of legal due process, the government has in the past, they did it to, I believe, 280 Canadians, that last year during the convoy, they seized their bank accounts. And, the government tried to say, well, we warned you we were going to do it. We notified you we did it. And we told you when it came back. No, they didn't. I've never once met anybody who was warned or even notified that they got access to their accounts back. And people should also know, many of those accounts didn't come back immediately at the end of the Emergency Act. Many of those are still frozen. And in some cases, they went on for months without people being able to access. The people that were frozen, that list went around the world. The Canadian government shared that list and told foreign banks in foreign countries like the Bank of China, Britain, France, New Zealand, all of these countries around the world, and the Americans said, this is the list of people. Do not do banking with them. Shut it down now. And I think the vast majority of people were not doing any banking with the Bank of China. But the point is that the Canadian government, without any form of due process, froze people's accounts and then notified other countries around the world not to do banking with us. But there's a question I do want to ask you, because this is important, and it relates to if you're successful and you become elected mayor of Toronto. There is across Canada, and I know this, and I confirmed it with Keith Wilson out in Alberta, but I also know that this is true specifically because the city of Toronto. When Rob Ford was the mayor of Toronto, there was a lot of pressure on Kathleen Wynne to fire Rob Ford because the premier of a province has the ability to dissolve a municipal council and remove a mayor. But I think Toronto is a little bit different. But what would you say to the possible threat of the premier, Doug Ford of all people, being a threat to trying to remove you as mayor if, as you rightly say, the system is meant to protect itself. It's not meant to protect the people. The system protects itself. So in your case, you're now the mayor. And obviously, I think you're going to have some issues with the current premier, Doug Ford.
I think you're wrong.
You think I'm wrong? Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
It's the complete opposite. I believe Doug Ford wants me to win over any of the other candidates because he sees me as a guy that will stand up for what's right. He sees me as the guy that will call out corruption, and he'd rather be dealing with someone like me who's honest, straightforward, and not influenced by China like Olivia Chow. You think he wants to deal with a far left NDP communist that has multiple ties to Chinese institutions? We just did an expose on her a couple of days ago. You all heard about the police stations being run by China in Canada, right? Well, Olivia Chow met with the company that runs those police stations as part of her mayoral campaign. So just like Justin Trudeau, who's also a far-left radical, the NDP is also bought and paid for and owned by China. She's actually not even a Canadian citizen. You know where she's born. So she's born in China. She's working with the people that are running secret and illegal Chinese police stations in Canada. And she also met with New Horizons, which is a company that has direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party. So do you think Doug Ford would rather have her, the supposed front runner, to work with, or do you think he'd rather have me, somebody who's conservative like him, who he agrees with on a lot of topics, and somebody that he knows will be someone who can back him up, someone that he can use as a scapegoat even. If he's doing stuff that he knows the people like, that the supposed establishment doesn't like, he gets to throw up his hands and say, oh, it's not me, it's Chris. And I think he likes that, because I believe Doug Ford liked being the people's guy rather than being the puppet of the establishment that he is now known as. So I could be the way that Doug Ford could not only actually gain some respect back from the people, but he can start working for the people again. And he'd find a lot less adversary with me than he would virtually any of the other so-called top candidates, Olivia Chow, Brad Bradford, Mark Saunders, or Anna Bilal, or Josh Malow, any of those people. All those establishment cronies, they're all far leftists. They all want more government. They all want more government spending. And I think Doug Ford has finally realized that the policies that they've had over the last couple of years have not helped his position. They've not helped his constituents. They've not helped his province. And they definitely have not helped the city. And I think he sees me as his best ally out of all 100-plus candidates that are running.
So I find that line of thinking absolutely fascinating. But I want to say, like, that thinking would have perfectly aligned and matched with Doug Ford pre-pandemic. Like, that would have been perfect. I think that would have made sense. But in Doug Ford's case, he bragged about being the most locked down province or place in all of North America. And I mean, he abdicated his responsibility to the public and gave complete control to the chief medical officer. He locked people down extremely hard while, he tries to come off as the folksy guy, but yet, and he campaigns as a conservative, but he's been governing for 3 years as a liberal. But here's the irony, is that
you know what he did?
not only...
He went and said, this is not my wheelhouse. This is not what I was elected to talk about. This is completely not what I'm an expert on. So I'm not going to give an opinion. I'm going to defer to the public health experts. He did what was politically safe. And it was, and at the same time, for him, it's true. He doesn't know anything about public health orders or anything. So why should he be commenting on it? So he covered his own ass. And now he gets to say, well, it wasn't my decisions. I was just listening to the experts. And now in hindsight, I can see that we probably could have done things better. And if he's honest with the people like that, and he actually started working with someone like me, and everybody's lives started getting better in Toronto, well, the rest of Ontario would start wondering what the heck's going on, and Doug Ford would actually start getting favor with the people again. And I guarantee you he'd rather be in favor with the people than not in favor with the people. And now that we don't have any more pandemic or those restrictions, and his primary concern is getting Ontario and especially Toronto back on its feet, well, I'm that best man for that job, and he'll be more than thrilled to see me win, I believe.
But would you be concerned that you would overshadow his let's say popularity? Like, because I mean, people can be real petty at times, right? Is there a possibility? I mean, because hey, people get vindictive when their feelings are hurt. I'm just being honest.
I can't presume to tell you what somebody else is going to think or how they're going to feel based on my performance, but I'm just telling you that in my opinion, and it's a pretty educated opinion, and I notice I say opinion when I'm not talking facts. I make it distinct. Mm-hmm. I believe he'd rather work with me than any of the other candidates that are currently have a viable chance of winning.
Okay. All right. I'll accept that. I do, because I do like that train of thought. I'm all about recovery. What's that?
It's called the
It is. And I'm all about that. I mean, I'm not exactly in a position in my mental gymnastics right now where I want to forget about what happened in the past. Do I want to forgive? I want to forgive after the accountability has happened. Until we have the accountability, then I'll start thinking or transitioning my mind towards forgiveness. But until the accountability happens, I'm not there yet. But I want to go to the...
One thing I'm going to correct you on. I never said I forget. I never said I forgive. But I will work with those people in the best interest of the people. That's the difference.
Agreed. Absolutely. So let me ask you then, because you talked about and it was one of my questions is you're the mayor of Toronto. How are you going to work with the Toronto Police Service? How is that relationship going to be?
I love the police, and the police love me for the most part. The only police officers that don't love me are the ones that are corrupt and lawless and they abuse the badge, because all the other ones respect me. And they know, because I respect them. I have the highest regard for emergency service workers. Firefighters, number one, because they never bother anyone, and I've never seen a bad firefighter. Police are number two, because there are some corrupt and there are some bad officials in the police. But overall, the police service is amazing. And I would take a bullet for a good cop, because I truly respect what they do. They literally put their life on the line. But on the other side of the spectrum, when I meet a bad cop that's abusing their badge and abusing the law and using it to intimidate, threaten, and harm people while carrying that badge, when they should be held to a higher standard, well, that just boils my blood, and I simply won't let that stand. So the good police love me. When I went to the courthouse to be tried for assault with deadly weapon on police, threatening to kill Doug Ford, Jason Kenney, and others with a sniper rifle, and dangerous operation of motor vehicle, I went to the new courthouse March 28th, because it was finally for my verdict after 5 days of trial. And I'd never been to this courthouse before, because it had just opened. And before I could even walk over to the group of police to get searched, they ran over to me, shook my hand, said, "We're voting for you for mayor, and you have more support than you realize." And I was in court being on trial for apparently assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon. Of course, I was acquitted of all those charges completely, because it was
can you give us a rundown?
Arrest.
Yeah, give us a rundown, because I think this is important. And the reason I think it's important, I wanted to talk about the charges that you had. And the reason I want to talk about it, because from my perspective, a lot of the courageous Canadians that I know have been pushing back, like yourself, since day one, have been charged. And I see it as a badge of honor that you're willing to be charged, willing to go through the entire process to have your voice heard and refuse to be silenced. So this is why I think it's important people understand the legal or the prosecution you've been under. But I'd like to hear, what are the status of the charges so far through it? Like, I think you said 71 or 72 charges you've had against you.
I've beaten.
Beaten 71, or is it 72?
It's 71 or 72. I have to confirm that number, but it's over 70. I guarantee I can confirm that. I have to check the last one that I just beat, and I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3 separate charges. Okay. So that's important, right? Like, so you've got this legal system that's coming after you, and you keep winning. I mean, that says something about your character to be willing to go through that level of persecution, but then to stick with it, fight through it, stay in Canada. Not only stay in Canada, but say, okay, fine. I'm now going to join. I'm going to get involved inside this organization, and I'm going to fix it from the inside out. I'm going to go in and attack the rot from the inside out and do something. I mean, a lot of people would have said, screw this. I'm being persecuted. I'm leaving. I'm going. But you're sticking it out. You're fighting. So my next question then becomes, what about your relationship? What is your relationship going to be with the Chief Medical Officer of Toronto or Public Health in Toronto? They're going to have big problems with me, because I'm going to go after them every way possible, because there needs to be accountability there. Everybody knows that everything they did was not science. It was politically motivated. Everything. Yes. They knew better from day one. If I knew better from day one, and my background, I have a sports medicine background, and I have a background in development, design, and build, but I'm not a virologist. I'm not an immunologist. I just have somebody with a high enough IQ and common sense to understand that everything that they were telling you was completely full of crap. And the reality is, I even got an email from Ontario Public Health stating unequivocally that you could not increase your immune function or your overall health with diet, exercise, and supplements. No. So you're supposed to sit at home, just drink alcohol all day, eat McDonald's every day, and you will be just as healthy as somebody who eats organic fruits and vegetables, healthy cuts of meat prepared at home, and trains once or twice a day. Mm-hmm. That's what they wanted you to believe. And vitamin D isn't going to help your immune system. No. It's only been proven for hundreds of years to be like the critical thing that makes immune function happen. And us in Canada, or 75% of us, are deficient all throughout the winter. But let's pretend like it doesn't work. And literally everything they told you was a lie. And if you wanted to do very good in COVID, there were some people that had their lives destroyed in COVID, and there were some people that survived COVID, and then there were some people that thrived during COVID and killed it. And you know what the difference was? The people that had the worst COVID experience and had the worst impact on their life, financially, mentally, and otherwise, were the ones that listened to the government the most. And the ones that thrived were the ones that listened the least. Let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. Just like all you people that kept saying, oh, the only way we're going to get through this is if we comply. And then the crazy people like me were telling you the only way you're going to get through this is when you stop complying. And then we proved it with the trucker convoy, which was the mass united non-compliance that I'd been trying to create. And surprise, surprise, all of a sudden we didn't have mask mandates, we didn't have travel mandates, we didn't have anything anymore. Because millions of people finally said, I'm not going to take this. They stood up and they just said no. And that's all it took. And that's all it took for you to thrive throughout COVID. Whenever the government told you to do something, and do the exact opposite. All of a sudden, your life wasn't impacted negatively, and in fact, you could carry on with whatever it was you were doing. But the moment you give in, the moment you listen to the government, the media, the medical establishment, now they own you, now they control you, and any decision you make based on the information they gave you is going to harm you or harm your family. They proved it with COVID, and now they're proving it again with the mayoral election. It's no different. If you listen to the government and you choose from what they tell you to choose, you're only going to hurt yourself, you're only going to hurt your family, and you're only going to destroy the opportunities for your children. It's that simple. The biggest lie the government's going to tell you now in the next month. First, they're going to try to ignore me. That's what they've been doing. But after the worldwide rally tomorrow, when we have hundreds, if not thousands of people supporting me and chanting and everything, it's going to be pretty hard to ignore me. On May 27th, we're having a massive grand opening free barbecue and food drive event for the Daily Bread Food Bank. Even though I wasn't invited to their debate, I'm the only candidate that actually donated to the Daily Bread Food Bank, and I'm the only candidate that's having a massive food drive where we're going to be donating all the food as well as money to the Daily Bread Food Bank. And we're going to have all kinds of entertainment. We've already given out thousands of flyers all over the GTA for this. It's for families. We have halal options. We're going to have vegan options, and we're going to have so much entertainment and so much fun. It's going to be a place where people can come and get a free meal with dignity and party and actually enjoy themselves. And we're showing people this because this is what's possible simply from a private citizen with the will of the community wanting to do good. I'm not a politician. I'm definitely not a politician. Never was, never will be. I'm only a public servant. But I don't even have the power of taxpayer dollars, or I don't even have the power of the government behind me yet. And I'm already doing more for the people of this city and done more for the people of this country in the last 3 years than all of these other people combined. And I have no problem stating that as a fact, because I'll line every one of them up and I'll say, hey, Olivia, what did you do for the people the last 3 years? Hey, Brad, what did you do for the people the last 3 years? Besides everything John Tory told you. Hey, Josh, what did you do for the people the last 3 years? And none of them will be able to answer. Why didn't they ask them that question in the debate? Why don't they ask any of them an actual question like that? Because the answer is, the only thing they did was vote against your best interests over and over and over, no matter how much you struggled, no matter how much your family suffered. They kept telling you, endure more, endure more, endure more, while they exempted themselves and enjoyed a lifestyle where they were the upper class and you were the slaves. And now they want to continue that. And you want to vote for that? You want to vote for the people who think that they're the rulers and you're the slaves. And they're going to give you better rent controls when you vote for them while they raise your taxes. Come on, guys. Like, I know I come off a little bit brash, and we'll talk about that. People talk about my delivery and everything else. Well, I was a freedom fighter speaking at protests outside in the heat for 5 hours a day. What do you think I was going to wear? You think I'm going to wear shirts like this when it's 35 degrees outside? Yeah. And you think I'm going to speak like a statesman? and all calm. No, I have to rile you up. I have to use shock and awe. I have to reach you any way possible. So I have to be abrasive. I have to be satirical. I have to be sarcastic. But now I'm a public servant and a statesman. And you can notice the difference when I do an interview. You can notice how I speak to people. And the difference between me and everyone else is I actually know what I'm talking about. I actually give a crap, and I'll actually get things done.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this question. In the past, and I want to be clear, like I want to be very specific or precise on how I ask the question, because I just don't want to get it wrong. But I think in the past, am I correct? Did you use the phrase in the past that you're not going to vote your way out of this?
Yes, and I was speaking on a federal level, because in a federal election, there's a couple different things here. In a federal election, whether you're talking about the U.S. or Canada, the reality is there's always only a mathematical choice of two candidates. So you get choice one or choice two, both of them compromised by the World Economic Forum. And then if you don't vote the way they like, in a federal election in the U.S., you have the Electoral College. A lot of states, swing states they call them, have voters where it's only about a 5% difference. So it can really go either way. So it's pretty easy to rig 5% of the votes and steal 5 states and now give that candidate 50 Electoral College votes and they won. And the same thing rings true for federal elections in Canada, except now we have seats. So it's really easy to manipulate results for a few percentage points to steal seats for whatever party. And the fact that there's only 2 possibilities means they can control it quite easily. And we already know that Pierre Poilievre, as much as everybody loves conservatives and want to believe that they're going to do so much different, I guarantee he's going to win the next election. It's already like basically written in stone. But what is he going to do different than Trudeau? The reality is, in February 2021, right before he became the leader of the party and right before he turned into a trucker convoy supporter, he was the vice chair for the Emergency Finance Committee on COVID. And his first 2 recommendations of emergency financial measures to combat COVID was a central bank digital currency and a digital ID. So how is he any different from Trudeau? The answer is they're not meant to be. That's why they're both wearing their little stand with Ukraine things. There was literally a meme where they were standing side by side, literally looking identical, except Poilievre was wearing glasses. So his policies are going to be the exact same. All the things he's criticizing Trudeau with right now to get elected, once elected, watch how fast they're going to turn into good ideas. That's what I mean by you can't vote your way out of that. However, at the municipal level, there are no seats. There is no electoral college. And a lot of the times, the candidate that wins gets a large percent of the vote, like 75% of the vote. It's pretty hard without Dominion voting machines and just a few mail-in ballots to rig an election where somebody can get that much percentage of the vote. And now, at the municipal level, you can affect things at the ground scale in very distinct areas. And that's important because when you do that in those areas, now you have a basis of comparison to the rest of the country. And if those areas where you've done those very specific things start faring a lot better than the other areas, well, surprise, surprise, you've just created a populist movement and you're going to have people running for office municipally all over the country, and we're going to start a grassroots movement that changes the world from the ground up like it's supposed to. You're not going to change the system from the ground, from the top down. You're only going to change the system by getting into it and replacing it with something better. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to infiltrate their system and replace it with something better. And what am I replacing it with? I'm replacing politicians with a public servant. A politician is self-serving and only cares about making money and getting power for themselves and their handlers. A public servant puts the people first, second, and third. That's it.
Okay. Let's talk quickly. What about the legacy media? You become the mayor. You're going to have to, as an elected official, as a public servant, you're going to have to address or deal with the mainstream legacy media. And believe me, I am no friend of the media. Every chance I get, I put a further nail in their coffin if I possibly can. I won't talk to them. They know that. They leave me alone because I've threatened to sue them a bunch of times. But here's the issue. You're the mayor of Toronto. You've got all that legacy media surrounding you. What is your plan to address that problem that you may or may not have?
How could they be a problem? The only reason they're a problem right now is because they're ignoring me, because they don't want me to speak, because everything I say is the truth and everything I say unravels all the lies I've been telling you. So they're going to avoid me speaking as much as possible. So how could they be a problem once I get elected? What are they going to do? They're going to avoid the mayor?
Well, it's just, you know, they'll take a soundbite, they'll twist it into 100 different directions that are all negative, and they'll try to paint you with that.
Oh, that's okay, because anytime the media films me, I have my own people filming, so we have the unedited version. And if they want to do something so stupid like that and play a soundbite, well, I'll just host a public press conference and play the whole thing and show the real context. And now not only did they just shoot themselves in the foot, they lost all credibility, and they might even have a lawsuit on their hands, which the general public would support. So do you really think the media is going to give me a problem? The media is going to do what every other politician and every other person that's been doing bad things over the last 3 years did. They're going to fall in line, because the reality is 90% of people, more than 90%, are followers. So when I get rid of a few bad apples and a few people that are the ones pulling the strings for evil, surprise, surprise, the rest are going to fall in line. They're going to fall in line right behind me, and they're going to be more than happy to do the right thing for a change, in my opinion.
Listen, I'm no friend of the legacy media, and I'd sooner see them all get defunded and have to compete on the open market just like every other independent person who's out there. So I've got, I had a list of questions, but you know, you've gone through a lot of this stuff anyway, so that's good. But I've got two last questions for you. And this question here is about you. Imagine you're in the audience at your own funeral and somebody's doing the eulogy. What do you want people to know about you specifically? Forget the voters, forget the supporters, forget social media. What do you want your friends and family to say about you and to know about you?
This is a very interesting question. I've never thought about this. I've never been asked this. So give me like 3 seconds to actually think about it. Sure. Normally I can block off an answer about anything because I'm talking about facts and reality. But this is kind of an introspective question, and I don't want to shortchange you on this. So if the viewers don't mind, I'd like to think about it.
Yeah.
I guess what I want my family, my friends, and everybody to know is that every decision I've made, everything I've said, every action I've taken was done in what I believe to be in the best interest of the people and the country and the world in general.
Okay. I want to tell you something. So I don't know if you've heard of an organization called Veterans for Freedom, and I'm one of their co-founders. Yeah. Drew McGilvery is really the leader of Veterans for Freedom. He started it. Him, me, 3 other veterans started Veterans for Freedom. You were the first person to wake up Drew McGilvery, to make him scratch his head and say, that guy's interesting to me. I really like what he said. You were the one who started making him question all of the COVID narrative. Him and I both agree. You've been a controversial person for one reason or another, and I don't believe half the crap I hear in terms of controversy. But I want to say you've been a pioneer from day one of this COVID stuff. You really have. So what you said about how you would want people to believe that you did it for the sake of your friends, your family, the Canadians, the country, I buy that because your actions support exactly that statement. But here's the burning question I really got to ask you. This is the one. How in the hell, with such accuracy over and over and over, have you been able to predict, we're talking months, almost a year in advance, of what the government was going to do to the public? How have you been able to have that level of clarity and predict what was on the horizon for us? I don't understand it, but it is one of the things that people talk about. It's like, he's always right. He predicts things that always come true. How the hell do you do this?
You want the real answer or the answer I'm supposed to tell everybody?
I want the real answer.
Obviously, I'm a time traveler. No, to be completely honest, when you know the end game, and we already know the end game is a world government, a world currency, a digital world currency with a digital ID, a 15-minute city gulags virtually all over the world that are virtually identical to each other. So you have no reason to want to go to the next one. When you know the end game, and someone like me, my IQ and my thought process and the way my mind is, my strength is deductive reasoning. So I can see things and I can analyze things in a way that most people can't. So when I analyze these things, it just becomes clear to me of exactly what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. They tell you, they really do. They have to use things like predictive programming to get the masses ready to accept the next phase of their agenda. So if you just listen to them, they literally tell you what they're going to do. The problem is I listen to them. I literally explain word for word what they literally just said, but then they'll come out and say, oh, no, don't listen to them. It's not what it really means. And the vast majority of people would go back to sleep. But now we're at the point where I believe the world, Ontario, and most importantly, Toronto are ready for me and ready for this, because we are at the point where we have reached the peak distrust of the government, the media, and the medical establishment. And they have never lost so much control over the hearts and minds of the people. And I happen to have a lot of support of the hearts and minds of the people. So much so, I don't think people really grasp how much people really respond to us. I can't even drive from here to my office, which is like 10 minutes away, without someone rolling down the window and saying, I'm voting for you. I can't go to a restaurant without a woman walking in and crying when she meets me. I can't go fill up my car at the gas station without getting people asking for pictures.
I walked down Wellington with you during the convoy, and it was like walking down the street with Mick Jagger. Like I couldn't get 3 words in, and then somebody was coming up and interrupting, taking photos.
But that was the convoy. That was the convoy, so it kind of makes sense because those are people from the freedom movement. Just take me to I was downtown when the Leafs were playing, and I was at an event where I had been contracted to go to, and I just went outside to smoke a little joint, and sure enough, I got mauled by dozens and dozens of people just standing on the street corner within a few minutes. And that's the response I get virtually everywhere I go. Just like you saw in the parking lot when hundreds and hundreds of young people were swarming the car and swarming the vehicle. That happens everywhere we go. I can go to a gym, I can go to a bar, I can go to a restaurant, and we get that kind of response. So the reality is literally millions and millions and millions of people know who we are and my team is around the world. The amount of support we have is far more astronomical than any of these other candidates. It is ridiculous. Olivia Chow just had her grand opening. Her office is about a 10-minute drive from my office. And by the way, out of 100 candidates, there's 5 that have an office, including me. 5. And other candidates say, oh, we don't need enough. No, you just couldn't afford one, and because you don't have the backing, and you couldn't raise the money because you don't have a grassroots movement like we do. We don't have a backing like Olivia Chow of the NDP and of Communist China. We have to get all our resources from a grassroots movement of working class, middle class people. The people that are at the very top of this pyramid do not like me. So the rich people do not fund me. The rich people do not support me. It is the working class people, the people that want to be homeowners, that want to drive a car, the people that want to have a future. These are the people that support me, the people that see me as a ray of hope for the life that they once could have had and now see fading away. And that's exactly what I am. I am the person that can bring that back.
Let me ask you a personal question, because it is something that I have experienced. I mean, I'm nowhere near well known as you. I have a very small amount of notoriety, and that's all because of, I was fortunate enough to participate in the convoy. But my experience has been, I go to an event that involves the convoy or a freedom rally of some kind. And the experience that I have had is that I meet people who know who I am, and they immediately present the very best version of themselves. And then immediately after that, I start to hear about the carnage that they have experienced in their own lives, their family lives. And so I get, in a very short amount of time, this burst of the best version and also the worst experiences that they've had in their lives over the last 3 years. And it is incredibly heavy on my heart, to listen to the carnage. How do you, because I would imagine it is on orders of magnitude higher for you and what you experienced than what I experienced, but how do you process and deal with the heaviness of the things that people are sharing with you in their lives? How do you deal with that?
Well, a lot of times it's really inspiring because people will tell me their hardships and then tell me how I help them get through it. And that's the most inspiring thing, and it feels so good. But people have told me I've saved their lives, I've saved their marriage, I've saved their children, I've saved this. They're the reason I didn't get a shot. You're the reason I didn't wear a mask. You're the reason I stood up. And I hear that literally everywhere, and that's super inspiring. But at the same time, I also see the victims of COVID. And like the little girl was the reason that I ran for mayor, because I met her the day before John Tory actually resigned in the hospital at 59 pounds, not even able to eat solid food. And she was a perfectly normal, healthy, professional little girl. And she had all these problems just because of what the government did. It had nothing to do with COVID, had nothing to do with her family. It has everything to do with the government. And just seeing her sitting like that and her telling me, saying, my daddy says you're going to run for mayor and help people like me. Is that true? Like, that's overwhelming. Yeah. Usually I can't even talk about it without I'll cry. But that's what inspires me. That's what keeps me moving forward. And that's what I'm fighting for. Because honestly, I believe a lot of the parents demonstrated during COVID that they didn't even deserve their own children. They didn't stand up for them. They put a mask on them. They put a jab in their arm. They told them to listen to their teacher, listen to the government. And they knew it was wrong. And that breaks my heart. And it's like you said, how do I deal with it? I have to balance the good and the bad. But even the ones that break my heart, I know that I'm helping them, and I know I can help them. So that's beautiful. It's the best feeling in the world.
You know, you and another good friend of mine, Italian guy, really good guy, Diego, were the reason that I stopped wearing the masks. Because you came back, you flew into Pearson, and I watched the video where they wanted you to get in the line and you walked out. You took the ticket. I remember you saying, you know, the cops were cool, but you took the ticket and you were telling people in the lineup, don't do what you're doing. Don't comply with that. And I was like, wow, like, I don't know if that isn't the most incredibly brave thing I've seen thus far in the COVID thing, or if this guy is absolutely crazy. But either way, the net effect was that still inspired me to really say, you know what, I'm not going to wear the mask. And what I did is, I remember the first few times I had a lot of anxiety. I mean, I'm 6'1", you know, I have a black belt in Krav Maga. I was a soldier for 25 years. I'm not afraid to fight. I've been in many fights in my life. I'm not afraid of the police. But at one point I did become afraid of the police for just different reasons. But, you know, I looked at that and I'm like, he's right, and what I'm doing is actually wrong. And between you and my friend Diego, I realized it doesn't matter if I'm afraid. It matters that what my actions are. And I have to stop wearing this mask as a matter of principle and self-respect, and to lead by example. And I remember saying, you know, if anyone approaches me, I already have a preset thing that I'm going to say. I don't wear a mask for medical reasons. Yes, it implies that I have an exemption, but I don't say I actually have an exemption. But I had a lot of anxiety when I first started to go to places without the mask, but it only lasted about a minute when I went into a store. After that, it disappeared. But, you know, you were one of the pioneers in the beginning.
I want to point out something for that. Everybody knows that I made that airport video. And then I even, so not only did I show people how to avoid the quarantine, how to avoid the test and avoid the hotel, but even after people had got admitted to that hotel, I showed them that they could leave whenever they want. And I actually got a man and his son to call me up on an Instagram live, and I called an Uber to the quarantine facility. And I told them what to say to the security guards on live as they left. And from me doing those two videos, within 5 weeks, the hotel quarantine was no more. So my actions single-handedly got rid of that hotel quarantine. And that's just me, some guy, as a random private citizen, making two videos a few minutes long. Think of what I'll be able to do for you and your family when I'm the mayor of Toronto.
Okay. Let me ask you the one last question, because I know you have a lot of things that you need to do. You're the mayor of Toronto. 5 years into the future, what does the city of Toronto look like?
Well, I'll be entering my second term as mayor of Toronto. We're going to have a whole lot of new high rises, thousands of brand new units, happy families, tens of thousands of new homeowners. We're going to have 2 new subway lines that were built by private corporations that cost the city nothing and, in fact, bring billions of dollars of revenue into the city. We're no longer going to have a budget deficit of $1.5 billion a year. In fact, we're going to have a budget surplus, and we're going to have record number of stability where we can actually put a moratorium on property taxes and even offer rebates to people like seniors who have been in their homes and who are on for a long time and been on fixed income. There's a lot less crime in the city. There's a lot more happiness in the city. When you drive around Toronto right now, I play a game. See how long it takes to see someone smiling. And you can drive around and see thousands of people, and none of them are smiling. In my Toronto, you'll drive around for 1 second, and you're going to see people smiling everywhere because everybody's going to be happy, everybody's going to be working together, and everybody's going to know that they have a government that's working for them, and they won't have to look over their shoulder or worry about getting stabbed in the back. That's going to be huge for people's psychology. That's going to be huge for the attitude of the city. And the economic results and economic prosperity is going to speak for itself.
Awesome. Awesome. My only regret is that I'm not going to be able to vote for you because of where I live.
That's
but you've been extremely generous with your time. I really do appreciate this. And
I just want to
this
say
was an
one
important
thing.
Sure. Yes.
This is the final message.
Yeah.
Guys, Olivia Chow is going to get around 90,000 to 100,000 votes. She can get that every election. That's how many supporters the NDP has. In a normal election, you need 400,000 votes to win, and that's why they've never been able to even come close to winning an election. In this by-election, they anticipate that 85% of you, over 2.5 million of you, simply will stay home, not register, and not vote. They anticipate less than 350,000 total votes spread around dozens of candidates. So the winner of this election may win with as little as 90 to 100,000 votes. If you believe the propaganda and you believe that I can't win, and you believe that I'm not even polling, and you believe that your vote doesn't count, Olivia Chow will win this election. Toronto will become a far-left communist hellhole, and it will take decades, if ever, to recover. But if you choose to get out and vote, and the amount of people who truly support me actually follow through with their promise and take their responsibility to their country and register and vote for me, we will win a historic, record-breaking landslide victory that will not only save this city, but it will set the tone for saving this entire country. Thank you, everybody.
I was going to let it go, but you hit on a couple of important things. In the election last year for the Ontario election, a dirty trick that the media and Doug Ford played is the media went out and they announced right away 2 things. With 2 weeks left to go in the election, they announced 2 things. They said that the polls are showing that Doug Ford is going to win in a landslide. The second thing they did when the advanced polls opened up, the media reported that the advanced polling stations and the regular voting, that the lineups were around the corner. So what it did is it made people say, you know what, if Doug Ford's going to win in a landslide and the lineups are really long, what's the point of doing it? Yeah, and you know what, 43%, it was the lowest voter turnout in Ontario history for a provincial election. And so I really appreciate that you bringing all those points about Olivia Chow, and making sure people get out and vote, because they'll do it. They will psychologically trick people into staying home and not fulfilling their civic duty and coming out and voting for true leadership of their city. They'll get somebody who was selected as opposed to elected if they stay home. So I really that point that you made at the end is really vitally important to the success of everything you described, not only the city, but also the province and the country. So thank you. That's a great way to end it off. And again, you're really generous with your time. I do appreciate it. I do wish you the best of luck. I will be advocating for you. I think this is a monumental vote for all of Canada, to be perfectly honest. So good luck with this. And I will post, I'll connect with you and I'll post the link to whatever you want, push forward on social media. But again, Chris, thank you so much for your time. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. God bless you. And don't forget to vote.
Yes.